Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. This is day 2 of the CUSD Virtual College Fair. We are so excited to have you join us for our first presentation this evening. I'm going to give everyone a few moments to load into our webinar platform. We have an excellent presentation for you this afternoon about WUE that you're going to learn so much more about as we have our wonderful presenters present with us. As soon as we are loaded in, and most of you are coming in wonderfully fast and furious, we're going to go over some very basic housekeeping items and then open our interpretation room for some of our Spanish-speaking families. So tonight we're joined by representatives from the University of Wyoming, the University of New Mexico, and Northern Arizona University. Some really basic housekeeping tips. Tonight, this presentation is going to be recorded. It will be available on our website on the College Fair tab and also on our YouTube channel later next week. All attendees are muted. Your video has been disabled, so we cannot see or hear you as a part of this presentation. To submit questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll either be able to answer your question live as a part of the program or in the end of the presentation through the Q&A window as well. There is a post survey that is included in your registration through Calendly. You'll receive an additional email about how to fill out that survey for us. If you have a moment, please feel free to do that. It helps us create wonderful presentations for you and know what you want for your college fair for maybe next year. In addition, we have interpretation available for our Spanish-speaking families for this presentation. If you would like to join the interpretation room, Marlene, I am going to open that for you, and then you'll be able to begin your interpretation, okay?
Okay, let me read this before you get started, just to make sure that everybody reads it here, understands it. Buenas tardes, aquí están las instrucciones en español y bienvenidos a la exposición universitaria virtual del 2021. Esta traducción en español es en vivo y está disponible para nuestras familias y estudiantes y miembros de la comunidad. Si ven ahí el glóbulo de intérprete, necesitan escoger ese y hacerle clic para que puedan entrar al cuarto de interpretación y para que puedan hacer la traducción. Si hay más preguntas, pueden comunicarse con, aquí están los nombres de las personas con las que pueden comunicarse en Futureology y no se olviden que tener su micrófono apagado y hacer clic donde dice interpretación. Okay, go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, and we are going to move forward for our presentation. So who is kicking us off this evening?
I'll do the quick intro, and then each admission counselor will do their own intro. But
vamos a hacer la introducción y todos vamos a dar la interpretación. Vamos a hablar sobre ir a la universidad y los diferentes que puede pasar, y vamos a mostrarles, aquí darles información. Aquí está diciendo la información del primer día de estudio y cuando se van a la...
Hello, everyone. I'm Betsy Rugsdassen from Northern Arizona University, and I'm the California Recruitment Manager, and I'm regionally based in Southern California, just like you all. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Next slide. Hi, everyone. Thank you so very much for giving us some of your time tonight. We're really excited to talk to you. My name is Adrienne Loveland, and I'm the Assistant Director of Admission for the University of Wyoming. And I am your counselor, but I am located in Denver, Colorado. Next slide.
And again, Gary B. with the University of New Mexico, but not at the university. So I also live in Southern California. And as you heard, all of us are in the Office of Admissions. And so our job is to help you get admitted. Let's go to the next slide and we'll kind of explain how that works. Every student, every parent we ever meet is stressing a little bit or a lot of it. And tonight we're going to talk about going from stress to success. On the next slide, we'll explain how that happens. ask questions, follow directions. Give me one more click. And because when I say ask questions, follow directions, it sounds so easy. But right now, if I could see you, there'd be somebody with their hands raised saying, what are the questions and who do we ask? Well, we're going to tell you some great questions to ask and also who to ask. Because if you ask the right questions to the right people, we're here to help. On the next slide, I want you to know that every college has an admissions office, not a rejections office. So our job is to help you get admitted. Remember, your job's to ask questions, follow directions. On the next slide, you'll see that every college has admission counselors, and parents, students, that should be your #1 point of contact. If you're interested in information about Northern Arizona, reach out to Betsy. You want to hear about the University of Wyoming, Adrian, Gary B for New Mexico, but every school, and start making those connections. I'm going to give you a website on the next slide. regionaladmissions.com. So we are regional. We don't work on campus. Our campuses have provided us the resources that we're able to live locally and get to work directly with you. I like being 800 miles from my office. My boss thinks I'm working. I'm out here having fun, talking with you folks tonight. It's great. But go to regionaladmissions.com. You'll meet 120 different colleges and their admission counselors. And those admission counselors are the ones that can tell you exactly what it takes to be admitted. Go to the next slide, if you would, please. Because we always say it's not a matter of if or when. Seniors, by this time next year, you're not at high school anymore. You're sitting in a classroom. You've gone from senior to freshman. Some of you may transfer from a 2-year to a 4-year eventually. Some of you may want to stay close to home. Well, we're going to talk about a program tonight that is somewhat nearby colleges, and we'll talk about what somewhat nearby means. On the next slide, give me 3 clicks, one more. We're going to focus on this Western area. Students in California, and generally speaking anywhere, like to stay close to home. And so right now, you know, you've got New Mexico, Arizona, and Wyoming. Those are 3 Western US states. And we're going to explain the program that you've come to hear about. And it's not a really simple program, but it's not super complicated either. Let's go to the next slide. And we all live in California. I live in California, you live in California, and the reason people love California, bathing beauties, Bay Area, Beverly Hills, beaches, boys, Beyonce, Bieber, everything starts with a B in California, including on the next slide, our beautiful traffic. This is the 405, and I figured out why it was called the 405, because I was usually going 4 or 5 miles an hour for 4 or 5 hours with 405 of my best friends. Take a look at the next slide, because this one's just phenomenal. Higher education in California means there are 500,000 high school seniors in California trying to squeeze into the few options. And what are the options? Well, on the next slide, you'll see what our options are. We've got 500,000 high school seniors, 116 community colleges. In California, you stay close to home. You've got Cal States, just 23, 9 UCs for undergrads, 75 independents. So we've got about 200 options in California. Half of them are 2-year and half of them are 4-year. 500,000 high school seniors, 2 million students in the community college. And when they leave community college, they're also trying to squeeze into the 4 years. So let's talk about beyond California tonight and what are students could do. And I know you hear out of state and you say, whoa, wait. So on the next slide, out of state, don't hesitate. And I know when we say out of state, folks start saying it's going to cost too much dough to go. No. Private institutions, and we're all 3 public today, but private schools, there's no in-state, out-of-state tuition. Guess what? And there are schools that'll freeze their tuition for all 4 years. That means you pay the same as a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And we're here to talk about the WUE program. And so let's talk about WUE and what it means. On the next slide, WUE, 2 more clicks. higher ed, lower cost. What does WUE mean? So give me a few clicks here till we get wild undergraduate experience, we underwrite education, Western Undergraduate Exchange, answer B and C, E, all the above. Well, for those that went to college with me, you probably think it's just answer A, but really it is. On the next slide, let's see what answer. Answer D, we underwrite education using the Western Undergraduate Exchange program. So Adrian is going to explain in 2 words what the Western Undergraduate Exchange program is. Go ahead and let's keep going here. Adrian, all you.
Awesome. And next slide, please. So, and Gary's right, it's tuition reduction. So when you think of WUE, think of that tuition reduction piece, because students that are in those Western states can qualify for that at any participating 2- or 4-year public college. And it's at 150% of the institution's in-state rate. It can really help alleviate that cost and that sticker shock of the cost of out-of-state tuition. Next slide. So when we talk about tuition reduction, what does that mean? So when you look at an institution, they have 3 tuition rates. So you have your resident tuition, you have your non-resident tuition, and of course, the WUE tuition rate. On the next slide, it will kind of read out what some of the wording that you're going to hear a lot. These are very different things and they can be confusing. So tonight we're really hoping to kind of debunk, if you will, what exactly these mean. So a resident is a student who resides in the same state as the university they plan to attend. That is a resident. A non-resident is somebody who does not reside in that state of the university that they plan to attend. So difference between resident and non-resident. We get those words thrown out a lot. It's easy to get them confused. And then there's reciprocity. Reciprocity is when a state has an agreement with neighboring states to provide a lower tuition. Sometimes these non-resident admission fees and tuitions are reduced or eliminated. They can sometimes be an in-state rate, but this is not always true in every single state, and it's not an automatic guaranteed thing. So you really want to ask the question, and make no assumptions that reciprocity is a given for you, because again, it's not always the case. On the next slide, what I love about this is we can kind of give you an example. I'm a visual person, we assume you are, and it kind of shows you what we're talking about when we say that 150% rate. So if you get the WUE, you say resident tuition at college X is $6,000 and non-resident is $23,000. That's a big gap, but that WUE can really make the difference at this point and kind of bring it down to a reasonable amount. So we will take 150% of that $6,000, which is $9,000, and over 4 years, that's $56,000. This is just an example. This is not the case at any school. It's just so you have a visual representation of what this can do and the significance of WUE. On the next slide, we kind of go through just some other ways to afford college and things that you're going to be hearing about and things that you should be paying attention to. So you get your WUE rate, you have those other 2 rates you kind of pay attention to, but financial aid, you're going to get that through your FAFSA. Students, if that are seniors, it opened up October 1st. We want you to fill that out because you can get quite a bit of aid. Juniors, sophomores, that will be available to you at this time next year. Every October 1st, it opens up. Merit scholarships will stack on top of that WUE. You want to ask the individual institution that you're looking at how you apply for those and where they're at. And so, of course, WUE tuition, financial aid, and merit scholarship equal big money to help pay for college. So there is a lot of ways to chip at that out-of-state cost, and great ways to chip away at that out-of-state cost. So speaking of cost, on the next slide, we kind of go through what the cost of attendance is for students. So there's going to be a breakdown of costs. You have your direct costs, which is going to be what you pay the college. So your tuition and fees, gotta pay that. That's how you go to college. And your housing and dining, depending on the institution that you're going to, They have different price points for those. And then you have your indirect costs. Now, these are not from the college. These are things that you're going to be paying for that just to be a student there. So that will always include your books and supplies, of course, transportation, driving, riding the bus, whatever it might be. And of course, Jamba Juice and Starbucks. You can't live without either one of those. So on the next slide, we kind of give you an estimated cost of the different institutions you can be looking at. This collegedata.com site is really great for some of this information, just so you can get an idea. I think we have an idea in our mind what it might cost, but this is going to actually put pen to paper on what those numbers are going to be. So you can see the public university for a resident, non-resident, and private colleges, as Gary mentioned, private colleges don't have an in-state or an out-of-state, they just have one rate. So you can see where that WUE can really make a difference in some of these different institutions, but that'll give you a good price estimate as well. So when you look at these, your probably first instinct on the next slide is, oh my gosh, that is a lot of money. I love that this little quote that Gary put in here, because it's so interesting and so fun to me. I've been in admissions a long time, so my colleagues that we've seen, you know, when we were a student to becoming a parent, to seeing how this mindset changes, that no worries, I can go wherever I want because my parents will figure it out. Well, we're here to help you with that, with these a couple of ideas on how to save some big money, especially with WUE. So on the next slide, you know, talking about WUE, it's a great way to pay for college. It's a great way to make things affordable. So how did we get to WUE? On the next slide, kind of where did this come from? A brief history on WUE, and we will not quiz you on that, but here's where all the colleges and universities are located in the United States. You know, we have over 3,600. So, and the main thing is you're getting in somewhere, but you can see on this map that we're heavily saturated on the East Coast. So on the next slide, we had the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education got together in 1953 that decided that the Western states should put together something as a coalition to start working on our departments of higher education. And on the next slide, they developed the WUE. WUE became with the 15 Western states and 1 US territory. And they decided that it would be, you needed to be in one of those states, going to one of those states for a reduction in tuition costs. So you can see all of these states, and this, again, that visual piece to kind of know where you're eligible for this. On the next slide, it shows you here in California where everybody's going, where these populations are headed out towards the east, if you will. But we're getting so many students that we need to kind of offer some type of incentive for you to continue looking outside and making it affordable. On the next slide, that's in 1987, they started that WUE program. So what a gift to our Western students to be able to look outside, get those tuition reduction programs, and make college so incredibly affordable. On the next slide, the one thing about this is that there are over 160 schools that participate in this, both 2-year and 4-year. And then, of course, 86 4-year colleges and universities. But please know that not every single school in each state is a participant. The schools can elect to be a part of this or not, which can make things confusing, and people can be like, but you're in Idaho, you should be a part of this. That's not always the case. The schools that are a part of WUE are very transparent with that, and we kind of shout it from the skies that we have the WUE. So make sure you ask when you're looking at institutions on if they offer it and what their policy is on receiving that scholarship. So on the next slide, so with the WUE, there are some, you know, I was saying not everybody participates in it. So Oregon is a great example of this. They have several institutions that do participate in it. Here are all 5, but then we just had on the next slide, it kind of talks about that Oregon State just started to, they had WUE, they got rid of it for a while, and now they're back. So schools fluctuate with that. Same with programs. There are some WUE schools that are major specific, and they may say, we offer it for all degree programs except for X, Y, and Z. But those can change from year to year. So it's such a good conversation to have with your admissions rep, like Gary talked about, getting to know us, because we want to help you help us. So we want to tell you everything that's going on and make sure you're knowledgeable about that. And then the University of Oregon got rid of theirs. For a while they had it, but they only offered 25. Now they don't offer WUE, but they offer other discounted programs and scholarships to make it affordable to attend their institution. And then on the next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Betsy to kind of talk to you about what the qualifications are and how this part of the WUE works.
Thank you, Adrienne. Thanks everybody for sticking with us this afternoon as well too. And in this very last section about the WUE, all about the WUE, I'm going to explain all the specific qualifications that each college or university may set for them. So always contact your admission officer for each of these schools as well too, because not every school is going to have the same qualifications. Very important to know. So next slide, please. But there are 86 different WUE four-year institutions, and every state will set their own criteria. So if you want to know how to get the dough, get admitted, you got to apply to the university. We always tell students too, sometimes other ways to save too. Sometimes we'll also give that as well too. Always check too, what are those qualifications to get in? Some are test optional, some aren't. There's essays, recommendations, and all too. It just depends. So you just want to make sure you meet the qualifications, and if they require it, some of them do have a separate application for the WUE. Some don't. Sometimes just applying, that's your ticket to get the WUE. So always check too, again with your admission officer for each university, if you do apply separately for the WUE. And we'll go to the next slide, please. And students also ask, as far as like, as far as where you're going to go as well too. I'm going to just give you a little test as far as getting into the WUE for an example as well too. Do you have to be a country western fan? Do you have to like country western music to be a part of the WUE as well? Own a cowboy hat and boots? No, you do not have to be a cowboy. You have to ask your admission officer to make sure that you are part of the Western Undergraduate Exchange, or make sure that they are as well too. So just keep that in mind. But if you do use that kind of little reminder with a cowboy, you can also be a Western cowboy and still get the WUE rate as well. We'll go to the next slide. And especially with residency, that's something always that students always have to check with too. Sometimes students also think, hey, I'd like to be a resident of that state. We're thinking of moving to that state as well too, or we have a house there or whatever. So you cannot use your time on the WUE to establish residency. If you did want to check in that state that you are going to possibly be going to college at, you can check with their residency office on campus, not to be confused with residence, but check with residency. At some colleges like mine and the others, they have an office that just works with residency too. So just keep that in mind as well too. You can't satisfy the time requirement needed to establish residency while you're receiving the WUE as well too. In some states, like my state, Arizona, they have a really complex residency requirement too, but that's always something good to check out ahead of time as well too, if you did want to get in-state tuition as well. And we'll keep moving to the next slide as well too. But things to keep in mind with that too, the academic qualifications as well. Some colleges and universities do have additional criteria, such as your high school GPA and or SAT or ACT scores. Now, a lot of colleges nowadays are not even requiring the SAT or ACT scores. They're optional. Sometimes they would just, you can submit them, especially if you are taking them for other universities, but at some schools, it will never hurt you to send them in. So always check, again, ask the admission officer, go onto the websites of all the schools you're looking at. Sometimes they will have a main number, a main address to email. Otherwise, if you can see geographically too, especially for students who are in California, who is the California rep? Is it broken up by the state as well too? But always check. Sometimes it's like, great, congratulations, you're accepted to our university, but you need a certain GPA to actually get that WUE rate. or you need a certain a certain SAT or ACT requirement. So every institution will determine those qualifications and the criteria for the WUE applicants, but that sometimes is a big one, GPA or SATs. And I'll talk a little bit more in the next slide about the other qualifications to make sure that you are too. This is another one as well too. Sometimes the WUE is not just going to be automatically offered or awarded to all of the eligible candidates. Some of them limit the number of offers. So it's almost like first come, first served. Sometimes there's a deadline as well too, like with FAFSA, the sooner you apply, the better. So look to see, some schools it's unlimited. If you're going to be applying to the school, they'll just keep giving that WUE rate out no matter what. So always check if there is a deadline, check if you, as far as when you apply as well too. Sometimes there's a limit, like the first 1,000 or whatever too, but a lot of them are unlimited. So always check that if there's a deadline, and also check too if there's a limit as well too. Applying early is always going to help. Some colleges even have their application open up in the summer too. So sometimes the earlier, the better. It's also kind of nice to hear from some schools early if they're on rolling admission, which means they just keep accepting students as soon as their application is open. And we'll continue on. Thanks. And the other thing to think about as well too, sometimes some financial qualifications as well too to keep in mind. Sometimes the WUE is going to be based also on your family income, and so you just need to check with each institution if the FAFSA is required. So we are always encouraging students to fill out the FAFSA. As Adrian said earlier, October 1 it opened for this year. Some colleges have like a November 15th priority deadline to send that in for the WUE for the FAFSA as well too. Some it doesn't matter. So just keep in mind with that too, fafsa.ed.gov for gov. And that's the way to apply for the FAFSA. And we will keep moving on here as well. And also the big one that we find at a lot of them with qualifications and eligibility are what programs are available. Is my major included? And a lot of you are not really sure what you want to major in. You might apply undecided, you might go exploratory, depending on what the college requires. But some of them have opened up the whole curriculum. All 96 of our programs or whatever are included in the WUE, and that's great. Sometimes it's only going to be one major, two major, or a certain college at the school, and sometimes it's not necessarily going to be the major that you are probably going to go into as well too. So always check that as well too. If there is a particular major or school or discipline that you're thinking of as well too. Sometimes those are, and one thing that you will find too is there are usually no impacted programs outside of the state of California. Unfortunately, that's kind of a California word, but not even with private schools in California. But some of those programs will be programs that are a bit harder to get into. So when you ask the colleges, sometimes it's some of those harder programs to get into, but some of them only offer designated programs at that reduced tuition. So always check. There's always some caveats to some schools. Some are very generous than others as well too. So always ask that as well too, or if there's an additional application to fill out for the WUE, sometimes just your admission is your ticket. And we'll keep going. Thank you very much. And the length of the award, that's something else to keep in mind too. A lot of them, it's going to be capped at 4 years or 8 semesters. So that's why a lot of our California students make sure that they get through 15 credits a semester or whatever the average is to make sure that they do complete it in 4 years. Some schools have some other accelerated programs too, or where they might have 2 degrees together as well. And so sometimes they will extend it for that extra year, maybe 5 years. So always check, but most of them are automatically renewable and capped at 4 years. It just depends as well too. Sometimes you need to have a certain GPA to maintain that WUE tuition as well too. So keep that in mind. Sometimes for certain awards as well too. So always keep that in mind. You just never know. And most of these schools also have WUE transfer programs too. So a lot of us schools, we love transfer students as well. So keep that in mind. Some of them will also make that available for students up to 4 years, even if you are a transfer student and maybe only going to that institution for, usually it's an average of 2 years, but sometimes it's 3 years as well too. So that's another great thing as well too. And we'll keep going on to, yes, so always, just to recap and everything else too, each college and university sets their qualifications to get WUE. Not every school will have the same qualifications. So you've always got to ask, sometimes even have some additional merit scholarships depending on what your GPA is, but it's always good to remember, especially GPA. You can get admitted to a school, but then they might say, oh, you need to have a certain GPA to actually get the WUE tuition rate. So keep going. Thank you very much. And so hopefully none of this is confusing again, but I will say it one more time because it can be confusing. Although this is being recorded, I think that we might be able to share this with folks too. So it's good to see that PowerPoint as well. We'll do it one more time. Thank you. So just to kind of everything, each college and university will set their own qualifications to get the WUE. It's very important to note that. Every school can be a little bit different. Some are more generous than others. And we'll go to the next slide as well too. And this is another great website to bookmark, take a picture of, or we might be able to put it in the chat as well too. On the WICHE, they call it WICHE for short, wiche.edu/WUE. So more info be found on that website. It's definitely going to not. The best thing to do is always check for updates, and especially the individual school that you're looking at, because they will have most likely the up-to-date information, GPAs and everything. So always just keep that in mind when you're looking through that as well. And one more slide. Other ways to remember us too, WUE, we underwrite education. It is your ticket to affordable out-of-state colleges in the West. So it's a great way to save. And we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to kind of switch gears a little bit. So the next slide, and each one is kind of describe what we do with the WUE as well too, and also just a little bit about our universities as well too. And we're going to have some time at the end for questions. So hopefully you'll be storing up your questions for us as well too. And as I mentioned, NAU, I'm the admission officer for Southern California students, and we are the Lumberjacks. We're located up in the mountain town of Flagstaff, Arizona, 7,000 feet high. So that's why we are the Lumberjacks within the largest ponderosa pine forest in the world. And we'll keep on going up in Flagstaff, Arizona. Sometimes we say it's in the cooler part of Arizona. It's about 2 hours north and uphill from Phoenix, only an hour or so. And NAU students get to experience 4 beautiful seasons, and our weather is a lot like Big Bear's weather. It's because of that elevation as well too, and it's the only major city in Arizona that's actually never reached 100 degrees, but it can actually get up to 100 inches of snow a year. So if you remember the 100s, but that snow melts very quickly, very much so, because of that high elevation, and days are just as sunny as most of California too. We're all a dark sky city, beautiful stargazing at night. Pluto was discovered in Flagstaff. That might be a question on Jeopardy someday that you'll get right. And we'll keep going to the next slide for NAU. And if you like being outside, especially skiing, biking, hiking, yes, you can go skiing in Arizona. Flagstaff has one of the best urban trail systems actually in the whole country. And it's a beautiful, cultural, historic downtown, only about 10 minutes from the campus itself. And it's just a few minutes walk. Restaurants and coffee shops within walking distance as well too. And we'll keep going to the next slide. And as far as our academics as well too, about 15% of our students are from California, 34% total are from out of state, almost all 50 states and 75 countries as well too. We've got about 21,000 undergraduate students on our Flagstaff campus. We're the smallest of the 3 public state universities in Arizona. We've got 96 majors in 7 colleges. And again, none of those majors are impacted, as you will see with a lot of us out of state schools. And majors we're most known for, English, engineering, construction management, forestry, nursing, anthropology, business, dental hygiene, hotel and restaurant management as well. And we'll go to the next slide. Thank you very much. Yeah, and here's where we can talk a little bit more about how AU does WUE. And as Adrian mentioned earlier, there's almost like 3 different tuition bases for each university. So with AU, we are just about 16,000 just for tuition alone. Again, there's some schools out there where their base tuition is going to be even less than say what NAU's is. So you can actually save even more at some of these other great WUE schools because of whatever the base resident price is as well too. But as you can see here, here's a great example of how you would save more than $9,000 a year off the non-resident tuition. We do put all those additional costs, those costs as well too. Altogether with transportation and books and everything, we estimate between $30,000 and $34,000 a year. So it's pretty close to what all the UCs are as well too. So keep that in mind for NAU, and you can just go right to the next slide. That includes for NAU all of our programs. There's no specific GPA. If you're admitted to NAU, you're going to get it. There is no additional application to apply as well too. We are test optional for admission, so you don't need to send in any test scores as well. But we do offer these 2 additional merit scholarships as well. So that's something that a lot of colleges will sometimes offer as well too. And it's depending on your GPA as well. You're automatically, for a lot of these schools, going to be automatically evaluated for those 2. And I think it's almost my last slide next. We only will look at these 16 core courses for admission. Actually be missing up to 2, and you can still be considered for admission as well too. So those are the only courses we look at. Unweighted GPA as well, just to keep that in mind too. Been test optional for several years, will continue to be as well. And I think my very last slide's coming up. I think it's almost at the end. We're enrolling admission. Actually, if you self-report your completed courses and grades, you're actually going to receive a decision, usually within a few weeks after submitting your application. But you can visit all of our colleges tonight virtually, and you can also visit NAU is back in person. We've been back in person for almost a year now, and we've got tours each weekday, but our Welcome Center is open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, to talk to ambassadors or an admission officer like myself as well too. And you can email me with questions. I'll put some info in the chat, but we're going to move up to Wyoming now with Adrian. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. Yeah, so University of Wyoming, next slide, is located in Laramie, Wyoming, which is in the southeast corner of the state. So we are about 2.5 hours north of Denver, about 50 minutes north of Fort Collins, and about 45 minutes west of Cheyenne, Wyoming. Laramie is your true quintessential college town. If Wikipedia had a picture of a college town, it would be Laramie, Wyoming. We are the only 4-year school in the state. It is us and 7 community colleges. So there's an immense amount of pride and a lot of love and loyalty for the University of Wyoming. We offer over 200 different areas of study, everything from accounting to zoology. Big programs at Wyoming are definitely our engineering program, as we just built a brand new $150 million building for our undergraduate students to do research, to get involved in their degree program, and really see how applicable it is to what they're doing. We also are really well known for our education program, as we're number 6 in the country, due in large part to our lab school, where we have kids kindergarten through 8th grade going to school in our College of Education, so our students can work with them day one. We are one of the last 3% of schools that offer such an experience. Our College of Business is ranked in the top 13% by the AACSB, which is a really special accreditation for quite a limited number of schools. Also, our nursing program, we have direct entry nursing and direct entry pharmacy, and our environmental and natural resources program is quite unique to Wyoming because of where we are. We have a little less than 12,000 students, and what's really great is even with the pandemic, we were able to get 86% of our students in jobs or in grad school 6 months within graduation. So not only are we providing an outstanding education, our students are extremely marketable to industry. On the next slide, we also are very, very outdoorsy. We are in between 2 mountain ranges, so you are 15 minutes from world-class mountain biking, rock climbing, and then of course about 35 minutes from skiing. We get a lot of snow, and it's so much fun to take advantage of that in our backyard. We also, in the snowy range where this ski range is, there's wonderful hiking, camping, fishing, canoeing, you name it, and it's there. It is a really great experience for our students. On the next slide, I kind of talked to you a little bit about our admissions process. Wyoming is a moderately selective institution, which means we're looking for a reason to admit you. We want to get you admitted. That's the business we're in. So we are test optional for 2022. We are continuously accepting applications throughout the year, so there's not a timeline to get those applications in, but we do encourage you to get them in before the winter break, just for peace of mind, and because in the spring there's a lot of different things that we have on a to-do list for you. We will take the common application or our own regular application For admission, we need 4 areas of what we call core strength for curriculum, if I could speak, excuse me, or we need 4 years of math, science, and English, 3 years of social science, and 4 years of electives. We need your app, your transcript, your $40 application fee, and that is it. So no letter of rec or an essay. We'd love to see you on campus. Please come check out Wyoming. It is a unique experience. So we'd have great online virtual visits as well as, of course, in-person visits if you're coming out our direction. On the next slide, it does show kind of our scholarship graph where we do offer the WUE as well as the Brown and Gold. For WUE, we do need a test score, but you can be test optional for the Brown and Gold. We will do whatever benefits you the most. And on the last slide is my contact information. I'm happy and here to help in any way I can, so please don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Gary B., to finish this up.
Again, thanks for being here and hearing about the WUE Higher Ed Lower Cost Program. I'm going to talk about where I went to college. Give me one more click so folks can see me. That's when I started at the University of New Mexico in 1974. I graduated last century, not 100 years ago, but a long time ago, and it didn't cost a whole lot of dough to go. But today you can bring the cost down, and we'll talk about that. But when I ask folks, what do they know about the University of New Mexico? I always hear UNM. Unfortunately, not much. So let's start with location. UNM, University Not Close to Mom. That's right, you're leaving Southern California, going to Albuquerque, New Mexico. The minute I say Albuquerque, New Mexico, you either thought High School Musical, Breaking Bad, or the desert, flat and hot. We're not. We're in the Rocky Mountains. So remember, UNM, University next to mountains. We're the same elevation as Denver, as I like to say, UNM, University nearly a mile high. Yep, there's snow. UNM means usually not much, but more snow than you get in Capo, right? So let's keep moving to the next slide and talk about majors. And I always say UNM. You name a major, we probably have it. UNM, University for Nursing and Medicine, the largest hospitals in the state, direct entry, pre-med and medical school. Let's talk engineering. UNM, University from nuclear to mechanical and every other kind. You're looking for comp sci, I'm your guy. Chemical engineering, environmental, bio, electrical, civil. Gary B, remember me. Let's talk business. UNM, University with a number of management programs. Entrepreneurial, human resources, marketing, management, operations. Maybe you're into film. Netflix is headquartered in Albuquerque. So now you're thinking UNM, University for Netflix movies. That's right, one of our business partners. And I bet some of you just don't know what you want to study. Well, that's perfect. UNM, undecided no more, come explore, options galore, will open the door to whatever you're looking for. Housing, UNM, University nice as a Marriott. Yep, one of my partners, sponsors. And let's talk dining, UNM, unlimited number of meals. I know it's Taco Tuesday. We do celebrate that 52 times a year in New Mexico. Let's keep going to the next slide and talk dough to help these folks go. UNM, you need money, 2 more clicks and they'll see how they get the WUE. The minute you apply, go ahead and click 1 more, 2 more, there you are. Every student, your application's a twofer. You're applying for admission and scholarship, the WUE tuition rate automatically. Remember, UNM, you need money, 2.8's great. You will get the WUE rate. And with a 3.0, you get even more dough to help you go. There's no separate application. So Gary B, how do I apply? Tell me. Let's go to the next slide and show the folks how they can get that application. I will waive your application fee. It's completely free. Just go to our website, unm.edu. We don't need an ACT or SAT test. We don't require an essay, a personal statement, or a letter of recommendation. Honestly, when you apply to a school, you have said, I want to go there. Guess what? We want you to go there. And we're going to have you self-report your courses and your GPA. This application takes 20 minutes. You can apply today. You would be admitted in less than 2 weeks. You're not committed. You don't have to decide UNM until next May. Apply today, decide next May. That's the way to play, I say. Let's talk dough to help these folks go on the next slide and show them the bottom line. In 2 weeks, you're admitted, you're not committed, and let's talk WUE. Let's show them the final numbers here. So every student with a 2.8 will pay only $13,000. If you have a 3.0 or higher, your WUE plus tuition rate is $9,000. Then we talked about the COA, how much you really pay. Okay, $10,000. Then got to add it in the books, right? So your COA with a 3.0 is $20K. That's all you pay. And that renews every year. Yes, there's other scholarships available that you can stack and bring the FAFSA money. Go to the next slide and let's show this, folks. Here's a couple of different YouTube videos I made. Hey, let's just cut to the chase and make this simple. Seniors, you can apply now. I'll tell you how. Do it online. It'll save you time. Don't be a fool. Stay in school is cool. Go to college, get the nods. Gary B, remember me when you're making that list. UNM, University not to be missed. Perfect. And as I always say on the next slide, remember me, Gary B. Let's get down and start taking the Q&A. What do you say? Higher ed, lower cost. It's been fun being here today, but now's the time to turn it over to you guys and hear from you. I know you've got questions about admissions, about colleges. Click through and let's get done with this PowerPoint and take their questions, Kristen. Ask questions, follow directions.
Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. I want to make sure that we do have a few minutes to describe or answer any questions that our families have before we enter into our next presentation. So if there are any questions, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask. If it is also more helpful, you can indicate the specific school that you'd like to know more information from in your question. We'll leave our Q&A open for another few minutes before we need to wrap up and actually start our 5 o'clock presentation that is right around the corner. But I want to say thank you so much to Gary, to Betsy, to Adrian for a wonderful and informative presentation about WUE. Thank you so